The Brooklyn Vegan Show is a podcast about music brought to you by the music blog and online record store Brooklyn Vegan. Make sure to subscribe to hear all of our upcoming episodes featuring interviews with musicians and more, and find us 24/7 at brooklynvegan.com, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Hey, welcome to the new episode of the Brooklyn Vegan Show. I'm BV editor Andrew Sacker, and today's episode is an interview with Tim Kasher. If you're unfamiliar, Tim is the lead singer of Cursive and The Good Life. He also leads a solo career, and today's episode comes just a few days before Cursive released Devourer, their 10th album and first for their new label, Run for Cover Records. I've been a Cursive fan for a really long time. Their 2003 album, The Ugly Organ, is a really formative record for me, so it was a real treat to talk to Tim. We got to look back on some of those classic records like The Ugly Organ and Domestica and Happy Hollow, and we of course talked a lot about the new record Devourer. We also reflected on things like the Omaha scene that Cursive came from alongside bands like Bright Eyes and The Faint and their former label Saddle Creek Records. Tim talked a little about his pre-Cursive band Slow Down Virginia. We talked about emo and a lot of other stuff came up too. It was a super fun chat. Before we get there, though, just a quick heads up that listeners of this podcast can get 30% off their first year's membership at DistroKid. If you're unfamiliar, DistroKid is a service for musicians that allows you to easily upload your music to all major streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, and more. It allows you to do automatic revenue splits so collaborators and co-writers can get paid too. It provides you with an artist page that links to your music on all streaming services. It allows you to add lyrics, credits, liner notes, and more. And again, you can get 30% off your first year's membership by signing up at distrokid.com/VIP/BrooklynVegan. And we've also included the link in the description of this episode so you can click directly from there. And now, here's my interview with Tim Kasher. Hey Tim, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Where are you right now?
I am back home. I was just out for some small string of shows and just back home in Los Angeles.
How I know that you're kind of known for Omaha. So how long have you been in LA?
We moved here in 2015. I lived here back in the aughts as well. Yeah, I love Omaha, and but we all just whatever. We all have different attitudes and different life experiences. I grew up in Omaha and planned on not living in Omaha. And I don't know if that's so much an indictment on Omaha as it is that I just have, just kind of with that sense of adventure that I wanted to explore different cities and kind of expand upon on life experience, I suppose. So I lived quite a few places and have been in LA for, I guess, Jesus. I mean, I guess this run has been we're on our 9th year now. But I'm married and Gwynedd works out here. So we're just that's what we're doing right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess being in multiple touring bands is a pretty good gig for someone with the urge to explore.
Yeah, I wonder how much it really has to do with it, honestly. Just the I wonder if I know that it was never I never outwardly was like I'm going to learn music so I can tour, but I do wonder how much of impetus that offered, when I was a young teenager.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure this is a kind of question you get a lot, but in your touring days, have you ever sort of happened upon a city where you were like, okay, this is beautiful, like I can't believe what I'm seeing, or if not a city, just a place?
Yeah, the one was just brought up the other day. God, who the hell was I talking to? We're talking about driving uh, through like the countryside of Norway, and there's all the fjords. It's just incredible. It's insane. I wonder if I'll have an opportunity to do that again. I tell myself that maybe I should just try to create that possibility. Uh, that was true. I often think about that. Well, I've been thinking about it more again because it was just brought up in conversation again. Uh, yeah, and there's a lot of cities I love. I mean, I think that going to Japan is like overwhelming in the best way. To see the way the cities are so immense there, or I should say Tokyo in particular.
Yeah, I feel like Japan comes up a lot whenever I talk to bands about like sort of just the most mind-blowing places you've been.
Yeah, it's just very exciting. I think just the type of I don't know. There are a lot of countries that I I never expected to go to or never expected to go to, and that would definitely be one of them.
So something I wanted to ask you about the new record you have coming out that Cursive has coming out is called Devourer, and something that you said in the press materials for the record is like the word means a few different things, and one of those things is that you're just constantly devouring like music, film, literature, and then creating your own versions of these things and spewing it out. Um, and like that struck me as interesting because, you know, you've been doing this a long time. A lot of times songwriters have been doing this a long time. You get to the point where maybe you just have your style. So I was like to hear, you know, something 30 years into your career that you're talking about hearing something or watching something and wanting to make your own version of it. I'm curious, what are some of the most recent examples of a piece of music that you heard for the first time and you were like, oh, this gives me a new idea. I need to explore this with Cursive.
This is great. I actually appreciate you kind of deconstructing that because I think that people are getting the wrong impression that of what I meant by that. Um, I devour the arts the way that every single artist or writer devours the arts. Um, and I'm sure there's an exception to those rules. I think there are some people out there that are just like I think there are some, you know, there's certainly musicians out there that are like, I don't like music, or you know,
Mhm.
writers who do, you know, the sacrilegious thing of like, I don't read, which I think is pretty rare, but I think they're out there. Uh, so yeah, I think that I think that ended up being kind of misleading. Even when I kind of put it in the bio, I was like, I wonder if that will be misleading, and I think it has been. Uh, it's just it's the most natural thing in the world. We all consume everything that's in front of us all the time. It's just like our brain, the way our brains work, you know. Uh, and I think I just get really excited about consuming, you know, new music and new film and new books, and I just like oh, it just and what a luxury that I get to do that. Uh, I mean, we all get to do it, but it just seems like I get to do it. I get to do it more. I do it probably a little bit more voraciously than some, and not as much as others, you know. Uh, but no, there's really no direct through line. As far as like I watch or take something in or listen to something and then I turn around and I go, oh, I'm going to turn around and make something. It is not even remotely like that. Really, all I meant is that I've been thinking a lot lately about how much I am a devourer of the arts and how much it inspires me and and then I want to be just a part of and then I want to be a part of those communities and I've just always been that way and I think a lot of creators I imagine are similar but I don't think I've ever had an experience where the closest I could say is that I definitely sometimes inspiration will just hit so hard as in something will hit me in such a profound way that you know whatever cliches people use, you know, gets the juices flowing. But I've never I don't I should probably even go further to say that I'm actually quite opposed to the concept of you know, seeing or hearing something cool and then being like, oh, I'd like to repurpose that. I never do that. I actually am
Mhm.
really pretty opposed to that concept because I know that artists do that and it's part of their process and I accept that as part of their process, but it's not for me. I really want to try and come from as much of a unique uh, point of view as possible. Um, even if it's a matter of going into something that's like, you know, maybe like that I recognize. I mean, maybe you're writing something that's like, well, I know this is specifically a waltz, but you still want to try to find what's you're specifically doing with it to justify why you're doing it and why it's unique to yourself. Uh, so, but that inspiration, it really does hit. It'll hit. Doesn't it for you too? I mean, don't you just get super excited about? And it doesn't have to be Dune 2. It's also just yesterday, a friend showed me a band, and this band called Karaoke, and they're from Georgia, I think, and they seem like they're pretty small, um, but they just excite me in a way that I'm not gonna like go. I'm not gonna borrow their music now or anything like that. But it excites me, and it excites me, and it reminds me that I also like to write music, And so then like, and to me, that's what I was getting at in the most base general way.
Yeah, no, and I know what you're saying, and I do love that because yeah, I mean it's like that inspiration. Even if you aren't a songwriter, like the excitement you get from like hearing a new band or a band you already like's new album or something. Like I don't know, I think this is it's something I think about more as like I guess I continue to age, for lack of better words, because like growing up, my parents, sorry, mom and dad, for throwing you under the bus on the podcast, but they were very like '60s, '70s classic rock people, and just were like, "That's it. I don't do anything newer than that." And I'm
Mhm.
like around the age they were when they had me, and so I feel like my brain is kind of in that mode of like, wait, like you guys didn't know, like I was born in the early 90s. So I'm like, you guys didn't know Nirvana. That's crazy. You were like in your early 30s. Like that'd be like
Yeah.
me not knowing Billie Eilish, like, so I feel like because I'm like personally going through this, like I'm at the age my parents were when they had me. I'm kind of like, I'm sort of like, what's like savoring that moment when it happens. I'm like, oh, like this is great. Like I fell in love with the band yesterday. This is amazing. It still happened. Like it doesn't have to end.
Yeah, that's such a good tangent of it, and it's very much how I feel. And as I am also getting older, and everyone around me is, I do get into those kind of awkward conversations every now and then with peers, uh, that they'll get into these kind of grouchy, derogatory conversations of like, I don't listen to new music anymore. Do you listen to anything anymore? And I don't want to be like prickish or kind of or pat myself on the back, but I'm like, well, yes, I do. Like I still get excited about. I still am searching for new music, and I still get excited about it. And yeah, I am turning 50 next month, so I have kind of gotten into an older mindset, I guess, in certain ways. I guess my body is starting to change in ways that make me sad. Um, but and I do think that I recognize that kind of that grouchiness or that kind of the tendency to maybe want to lean into what I already know. Uh, but I mostly combat that with a greater curiosity of what I don't know.
Do you find that it becomes more of a conscious effort over time than maybe it was when you were a teenager?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you for saying it better than I could. Yeah, as a teenager and in my 20s, I think it was, well, I mean, there was so much more that, I mean, maybe that's it too. There was so much more that you don't know than you do know at that point, and I suppose that's stupid for me to say. That's still the case now. Uh, but we do catalog so much in our lives, and I think there's a point where many people kind of feel like they've cataloged enough, and they have all of their music in their literature from those formative years of being a teen and in their 20s, and then they go, that's it, I'm packing up. I think, uh, like I've got my stuff, I got my Nirvana. So but I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not that interested in that, and that's why I think Devourer got kind of brought up. Is I kind of started thinking more and more about how I continue to want to do that. And that's not so much really what the record's even about, but I did find it interesting to just kind of include that in the bio. That's we went through like 1,015,000 different album titles, and the how we ended up with Devourer really was that it wasn't an album title at all. It was just something that had been on my mind lately, and as I was kind of working through any and every possible iteration of what an album title could be for this record, I started thinking about just something altogether different, which was that you sure are a devourer of the arts, and I was like, and then I started thinking about how I could relate that, how that does kind of relate to the album in a handle of different ways.
Yeah, no, definitely, and we will definitely also dive into those ways in a bit, because I think I know already what you mean. But also when you mention like that, you're sort of almost like against the idea of like hearing something and being like, let me make my version of this. Is that something that changed over time? Like I know a lot of people when you're first starting out playing music, like the natural thing is sort of to just sort of copy your favorite bands. Like would you say that that mindset you have is something that evolved over the years of doing this?
Uh, I think that we start at a very young age. We in a kind of precocious way. We felt it was really important um, to to kind of be as unique as possible, and we were really into being kind of genreless, and that was kind of part. So that was part of it. It was just trying to carve out something unique, and something that was uniquely us. And it's also it's also the advice I my token I have token advice for the youth of for the young music writers of today, and I've been saying it for probably 20 years or so. And it's that you really should just that you shouldn't do that. Uh you shouldn't, you know, fall in love with military gun and then start a military gun band. It's like you should fall in love with military gun and then start a band that excites you as much as military gun excited you. If maybe that's an okay way to put it. Um, but that you just really have to. You really, I believe you should really be true to whatever is in your head, even if it doesn't feel very cool or very popular. I think you should just figure out what your aesthetic is, and create that. And the bad news is that people might not like it, but it's more important to create what it's better. That's a better swing to take. Take a big swing, and just kind of be like, I think this is my impression of what I think music should sound like. And it might not work out, but you'll feel good about it. You'll feel, I think you'll feel good for creating something that you feel is more closely, uniquely yours. After that, when that doesn't work out, if you're dead set on being in, you know, and having a band and kind of getting out there, I don't know. Then maybe you should. Then I start giving shittier advice. You know, like I don't know. Maybe you should just copy something else. I if you just really want to get out there, if you just really want to get to out to Ohio, I think there's ways to do that. You know, but I don't encourage that process. But you know, if it's just a matter of wanting to have fun, I mean, music's fun too, right? So.
Yeah, I think there's a merit to both, but I think the people who kind of get that same excitement from feeling like just something is something you've never heard before probably relate to what you were saying in the first half. Because I mean, even just for me, like just to go back to the concept of when you're a teenager and everything feels new. Like, I mean, I was a teenager when I heard the ugly organ, and I was like, nothing sounds like this. Honestly, I still kind of
Oh
think
yeah.
that, and it's like that's like that. I think that album sticks with so many people, has stuck with me, for example, because like the more and more that you devour, no pun intended, it's like, oh, this still stands out. Like they were doing something in a way that their closest peers and contemporaries were not really doing.
Well, that's great, and it made that so it's nice to cite that as a potential example. You know, I know that we were terrified when we released our Ugly Organ. I think that I felt like it was too that it just wasn't didn't really fit in anywhere, and that it was too unusual, and that I leaned too hard. That was a lot of my learning experience comes from Ugly Organ, I believe. To maybe I can give that quick trajectory is that when we were younger and we were doing Slow Down Virginia and we were from Omaha, Nebraska, and we didn't really have a lot of we had peers, but we didn't have a lot of peers. And we didn't really know what we were to do or what we were doing, and so we really did kind of just earnestly write the way that we felt music would sound like. And so it was pretty unusual and unique. Uh, I think that after that, I think the first three, sorry to throw these under the bus, but I think the first three Cursive records were us trying to figure out like where we fit in any kind of music scene. Um, and after that, after Domestica, deciding to take that big swing, which we're talking about, which is like, well, what if you just write exactly? So I think Ugly Organ actually kind of is more closely related to Slow Down Virginia in that regard. That it's just a little more uniquely us, and I think Domestica is a really nice record. I'm sorry, everyone gets pissed off when I shit on that record. I'm not shitting on it, but I that it to me it doesn't feel as I think that we were leaning a little bit into like a post hardcore sound, which is just maybe just a small facet of what we are, or like maybe we're just leaning a little too much into what we loved, and then regurgitating that a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm. Well,
That's
to keep
okay. I don't really don't mean to denigrate that record or any of the records. I'm officially proud of all of the records.
Well, to keep that going, I mean that's interesting to hear, because one of the things I've also always loved about Happy Hollow is like it felt like, okay, we just did Ugly Organ. How can we just completely not repeat that? Like I always see that album as almost like, I don't know if it's the dark horse or something, but it feels like you were really just like, we don't care where we fit in, and I think that's also like that record stands out for that reason.
Yeah, it's super reactionary. I look back at that and it's just so reactionary. And I got called out for it by some of my like closest friends. Um, I mean, politely calling me out as in like, wow, you really like you kind of stumbled onto something with Ugly Organ and you immediately did a 180. And it's like, yeah, I did. That was kind of the point. It was like, there's no way I'm going to put another Ugly Organ, or if you've already heard of Ugly Organ, so we have to do something else now.
And I know, like, on that note, you've sort of talked over the years about, obviously you after Ugly Organ, you no longer had a cello player, and I feel like I know you've talked in certain interviews about kind of not wanting to be just like the cello band, and now obviously you have a new cello player for 3 albums in a row, including the new one. What sort of made you like come around on that idea and bring that instrument back? I mean, it's such a driving force on the new record too.
Yeah,
So.
a lot of it's a lot of that is pretty natural. We yeah, so yeah, we the to truncate what you just said is um the cello does feel like a little bit of a gimmick. I hate to say that, and that's what we've been grappling with for these like all these years. And that's why we decided to turn away from it, and like we switched over to horns and was like, we need to just kind of keep moving. We can't sit still. But it was when we did an Ugly Organ like Victory Lap tour. I think it was like a 10-year thing or something like that. We did that around 2014, so it was an 11-year thing. But so we needed to bring a cellist back into the fold, uh, and through that process, really got to be Megan Seabees, who we've been playing with for a while now, and she's just becoming one of our really close friends. Uh, and so we kind of just started working. She kind of just fairly organically just kind of like became part of the band. Uh, and we kind of recognized that, shoot, if we're going to keep touring, like maybe do we keep touring with the cello now? And we kind of had to ask all those questions. And since Megan was around and was a friend, it had become a good friend of ours. It kind of just seemed like, well, yeah, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just keep touring with Megan? And we kind of started dabbling with bringing it back into writing into the writing process. And here we are again. I think it's just that is probably has something to do with just kind of with age and in just not having to set such staunch parameters on what we do. Like, well, we do cello now. Now we're not doing cello, or it's kind of. I think we have a little bit more of a carefree attitude about it. And also, I think maybe it was important to us to we brought cello in, and then we found some success with it, and then we kind of showed to ourselves, or maybe to others, or maybe we just needed to show people that like that's not we're not the cello band. We just don't want to be the band, I guess. The whatever that is band, and we were just talking about this the other day. We feel like we've kind of figured that out, and I think Megan feels that way too. It's just like, yeah, she's not the cellist of the band; she's a member of the band. She's just a member of the band. She's like it's I think that we've exercised our personal demons of feeling like it's a gimmick.
So since you brought up like Slow Down Virginia, another thing on my mind a lot these days is, I think, I don't want to say that the internet has made regional scenes obsolete or anything, but it's obviously not the way it, like when, like I kind of said at the beginning of this conversation, Cursive, Saddle Creek, like Bright Eyes, all this stuff is like so sort of tied to this Omaha scene that for us who are not from Omaha, there's a lot of lore there. So tell me, like, how did you kind of, since you said you were like looking for your place in a scene, how did you kind of start to get involved in like what we now all know as like the Omaha scene or the Saddle Creek scene or the Omaha sound or whatever words have been put onto it over the years?
Well, It might be. There's probably different. There might be different versions of this story. That, for, for my the way I recall it, we were doing Slow Down Virginia, and we were really outcasts. We just couldn't fit. We just didn't fit in anywhere. People weren't that interested. It felt like people weren't that interested in what we're doing. We were playing. We were also. It was in Omaha, and Omaha isn't like the thriving music place that it is now. It was really not. It was kind of the antithesis of that back then. I mean, although I will say, we always. I mean, there were some great bands that we were able to that influenced us, like the bands that are just a little older than us that were kind of doing that were building a punk rock scene back then, and that was really important to helping us kind of recognize that that's something we could do as well. Uh, but we still got lost back then. We were just playing. We were just booking ourselves into like what any given kind of like normie bar, like out in West Omaha, just like wherever in Omaha, and we'd play to nobody, and we just kind of kept trying and trying, and we kept making recording. Recording all of our songs and sending them out to labels and not getting any luck and not finding any takers uh, and then just like this young people like like the Obersts like Justin Oberst and Connor Oberst, who were very young at that point. They're like young teenagers, and we were 20, I guess, I don't know, 21, and they took an interest, and the faint fellas at they were kind of like starting to come around, and they were excited about it, and we kind of started being ushered into a little bit more of like a house show scene, uh, and everything just kind of developed from there. But it was all so tiny. I mean, we were all uh, for a handful of years there, we really were just each other's fans. Like when we would have shows, it was really just us going to each other's shows. Um, did I answer the question? I don't even know where I ended,
Yes,
where I
definitely.
ended
I
with
mean,
all this.
totally. I mean, I do feel like that is like what, it makes that regional scene thing so special, that it's like we look on it back on it now and it's like, yeah, like Cursive, Bright Eyes, The Faint, these are nationally, internationally known bands, but at the time to see it as just that, like I can picture in my head what it was because I went to my own local house show scene, so it's like
Yeah.
you can see it, except it's Tim Kasher and the Obersts and the people from The Faint. But yeah, no, definitely. Um,
Where'd you grow up?
so I grew up like about an hour north of New York City. We had like one venue, and we kind of got spillover from the Long Island scene, the New
Huh.
Jersey scene, and the Poughkeepsie scene.
Yeah, it's wild up there. That's where I just was last week, and just it's so funny when I was traveling around with Thursday, which I've been just out with them a lot lately. But everything feels so close knit all around there. All the different scenes, and because it really is, no one's really that far from each other. It's such a vastly different experience than the way we grew up, where the closest was, well, I mean, we had Lincoln, Nebraska, which was 45 minutes away. That was kind of part of our scene, was Omaha and Lincoln, and after that, it was kind of done. We were kind of a desert island.
Yeah, it's definitely super interesting. Like, I mean, like for me, like Thursday, where they were just a little bit too early for me to like have seen them in a basement, but they were like already instant heroes, when Full Collapse came out. And
Yeah.
it's like I was young enough to just think that was how everything was. So then I would like get older and meet people who like weren't from it. I'm like, oh yeah, like when Thursday dropped Full Collapse, right? And they were like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I saw that you posted last summer on Instagram that you were looking for old flyers from the Omaha and Lincoln scene for some project you're working on. Can you shed any light on what that is?
Yeah, we did it. It was it's a second feature film that I'm just finishing right now, and it's set in Omaha, and it's kind of this thriller. It's very much I guess, a horror thriller, and it involves a like a local metal band from the Omaha area, and I wanted to authenticate their practice space with real flyers that really occurred, over the past 20, 30 years around Omaha, and I got some great ones. It was a pretty cool little project.
Awesome. So since you mentioned it, what were some of those sort of slightly older bands that helped welcome you into the local scene?
Their bands. The most important for me was Mercy Rule, and they were a great band, and they were finding regional and some national success. That was that should also offered inspiration for all of us. Mousetrap, the same thing. They ended up on Grass Records, which Connor Oberst and I, our band, Commander Venus, ended up on Grass Records as well. So that was pretty exciting. Um, Opium Taylor was some friends of ours. Sideshow. There's a pretty, you know, it was a good scene, man. We were out. I feel like we were out for a while there. We were out at shows every week, in and just insanely inspirational. Simon Joyner, who's really close in age. We're really close in age, but I always think of him as as a bit older than just a peer, just because when I don't know, he started just a little sooner than I did. So I think I was, 16 years old, and when I first saw him play, like seeing him open for Big Chestnut, and I was just like, wow, who is this cool motherfucker who has his own cassette tape out and writes his own music, and his music's great, and all that stuff's very inspiring.
How would you say coming up in that scene like shaped you into the musician that you are today? Like what are some sort of just like ethos maybe that you have that you might not have developed had if not for coming up in that really unique way?
Oh, I don't, I haven't really thought about that, but I bet it's just all there. I think that it was a great scene that was very ethical. I think that's really important, right? So there was a lot of integrity as to what everyone was doing. Everyone really took care of one another. I think there's a lot. I think that we grew up in a really special, very nurturing environment, and I recognize that that's not generally the case. I've spent the last 30 years having various conversations about this because I get so curious. I just asked you a few minutes ago, where are you from? I tend to
Mhm.
get curious about people's scenes and where they came from, and um, but more often than not, way more often than not, I've been meeting bands that are curious about what it was like the conversation we're having now, and then they go on to describe that it's just that there's an absolute dearth of that in their personal scenes, and so I've come to recognize, and I please anybody correct me on this, but it seems like a lot of different cities tended to instead of nurturing each other into a music scene, it seems like there's a lot of kind of infighting and people kind of elbowing for opening slots and just competing instead of propping one another up. And we've often said that that's a big part of. We wonder if that might not be a big part of what made Saddle Creek potentially succeed, is that we propped one another up instead of trying to drag each other down.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely something I have seen both examples of over the years, and I'm like something I think about a lot. Where I'm like, it's really easy to get sucked into the competition mindset, I think, and
Hmm.
I think whenever it's the more supportive mindset, it's like it really is one of those like rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing.
Yeah, I truly don't remember competition back then. Sure, there'd be like the small, bitter combos we might have amongst inner band amongst one another of like, oh, why are we, second or fourth? I feel like we should be main support now, and but then you'd be like, that's fine. Let's just try to write better songs. Like that's about as brutal I feel like as a guy. It's just, but I don't know. It's just there was just a lot of support, and I think that we were ushered into a scene that was already doing that. So I think that Omaha is a nice place. The music scene there is very nurturing. At least it was back then. I imagine it's probably still is.
So on that topic of kind of like, looking for a place to fit in, looking for your own thing to do, something that's always stood out to me about Cursive and a lot of the Saddle Creek bands is there's always kind of this like, oh, like they're emo, but they're not emo, or like they're the indie rock scene, but they're not that, like, so like, I guess my question is like, because they're in when the era when Ugly Organ came out, especially, there was a lot of like, if you were an emo band, the indie rock scene looked down on you, and some vice versa there too, probably. When you were getting Cursive going, were you ever like aiming for emo, or aiming to definitely not be emo, or like looking to be, more of like a merge Matador indie rock thing? Like, I'm curious where you kind of land on that sort of.
Yeah, that's a fun thing to explore. Uh, we definitely you nailed it by saying, or did did we want to be a merge matador thing? Yeah, absolutely. I probably still want to be. I don't think I ever dropped that. It just always was like, oh, that the cool labels, with the cool bands. Um, uh, I I think that I think it benefited us that we weren't very plugged into what was going on in a greater sense. I remember early on us having kind of jokey conversations in the van, like say after leaving some small show in some small town, and being, one of us would be like, so I guess we're emo. And we'd be like, what are you talking about? I'd be like, I was talking to a guy today and he was explaining that we're emo, and we're like kind of not even sure what the word is. And then they evolved to like, oh, I guess we're screamo, which I don't think that we ever, you know, uh, what I'm really thankful for is that I never got so. So I think that emo has, and I know this is just the eternal conversation, but it has a derogatory connotations, right? And in many ways it was used derisively, and that's kind of what you're expressing as well. Um, I think it's so dangerous to do that. I think it's dangerous to lump bands into something that's like that you're doing in a derogatory fashion, because it really doesn't help them to it can potentially stagnate what they're doing. They might, then they're like, maybe some people think like, well, yeah, maybe they'll second guess what they're doing in a good way because maybe they hate what they're doing, hate what the music sounds like. But that's unhealthy. Fuck you, like just stay out of their way. Maybe they, let people make bad music if they want, um, or good music, whatever it is. Uh, but I'm thankful that I never got too much of an understanding of what emo was. And then by the time it was really prevalent, and I was like, oh man, I'm like, we're all being really shoehorned into emo. By the time it got to that point, we already didn't give a shit. So we kind of always have known what we are, and it's just like we're not somebody who so we never sought to be something that was emo or to be a part of it. As I said earlier, it's like we really wanted to be non-genre. So emo was certainly just another genre that we're like, well, let's not lean too heavy into anything, into any one direction if possible. uh so yeah, I'm just glad that it didn't choke what I was doing or what we were doing, because it very well could have, because it was kind of ugly. It was kind of an ugly term, and I think that it's being used a lot better now. I've still never considered ourselves emo because or used that term as something that we are, because I think it's really complicated, and it's almost, I think maybe it's more of a well, it's a scene, but like a scene and a fashion and maybe a way of life. I'm not really sure. It's just never been something that really applied to us, and so we've always felt pretty indifferent. And even though we've been lumped into that forever and will forever be lumped into that, we also kind of recognize that that doesn't really matter. It's just a it's just a tag that they've tagged on us, and if anything, maybe I'd say it's unfortunate, because I think I think there's more people out there that maybe would take an interest in Cursive if they realize that it's not. I don't know what is it. It's not Fallout Boy. I don't. What is the whatever you want to use as your emo tag.
Right. I feel like that is kind of um the endless, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but like conundrum maybe with like this whole thing. It's like, yeah, there are a lot of bands, I think, that once that word gets applied to them, a lot of people who might like them are ignoring them. I've From where I stand, I've always seen Cursive as like kind of a very rare band to just totally like ride right in the middle of the fence, because like, like you can go tour with Thursday and Thursday fans all know your music, which is, like, I wonder if that wouldn't happen if, if Thursday just, for example, maybe took a Matador merge band from those days out. Like it was just a sort of
Yeah.
a different world. But then I also feel like it, I don't see that it hurt the band as much as I've definitely seen it hurt other bands. So maybe, just my 2 cents, but it always seemed
Yeah.
like you guys kind of rode that line in a really, it was probably like some level of luck, but very cool to see. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, good. I think that we just always wanted to. We've just been. We continue to be indifferent about it. I recognize too that there is a. I mean, there's a large. I mean, I just did a pretty unusual thing at Bonnaroo. I did this like dashboard confessional emo super jam is what it was called, and that was a tough decision. To be
Mhm.
like, do I really associate in something that's so specifically called emo super jam? Uh, but I had friends going and doing it, such as Jeff Rickley from Thursday and my buddy Anthony Green, and I love those guys. And I don't I don't pass judgment on their music, and I really don't want to pass judgment on anything that's emo or whatever. I'm pretty indifferent, but I bring that up because it's a large community that has really embraced Cursive over all these years. So I appreciate that. I think we've always appreciated that, while also hopefully kind of just trying to like stay in our own lane, or carve our own path, or whatever cliche you want to say.
Yeah, I think that's a way better way of putting what I was trying to get at. Yeah, at Bonnaroo, you played at the drive-ins One Arm Scissor. How did you end up deciding to do that song?
It was great. They were all so cool about it. They were like, they were just like, so we're doing this thing. What song do you want to do? And I was like, oh. And we ended up being a little bit of a funny back and forth over email, but really, I reached out to I mentioned it to to the Cursive members one day. I was like, I'm doing this thing and I don't know what is it. What am I supposed to do? Like, what song am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to do some sort of emo song, and then people kind of started like, well, what about Quicksand? What about Fugazi? What about at the drive-in? And I was like, oh, okay, okay. It just kind of started opening up idea of like, right. I mean, we're considered emo as well, and so it's just like, what if we like it could probably a fairly broad term. I did notice that Chris Caraba did. I think he felt like the need to define it a little bit. While before we played it on stage, to the crowd, to the audience. Uh, I actually kind of I like that too though, because I think he also wanted to define me as not necessarily emo, but like I think he was saying kind of like the art, the art adjacent emo faction or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I appreciated it because I was like, yeah, I don't, we didn't really ever we didn't really want to lean into any specific genre. So, but yeah, what a fun song to get to do at the drive-in. That was a treat.
It was cool to see that you were there and that you did that song. Because yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I'm a big fan of the support that the emo community has had for decades now. It's really, I think, we're into something that people wouldn't have predicted 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of nostalgia around like the same kind of 20 hit songs. So I was like, oh, it was cool to see
Oh,
you did like One Arm Scissor, like, yeah, of course you're gonna have like someone's got to sing My Chemical Romance, and they're a great band too, and that's fine. But it
yeah.
was cool to see something like off the beaten path, I guess.
Yeah. The really good, since we're really delving and deconstructing emo right now, a good era for me was around 2013, and I went down and played Fest and had my eye, and that was when my eyes were really open to what I didn't, to that they're calling it. Like different waves of emo, and I think they may have said at that point it was fifth wave emo, which seems like a lot of waves. Maybe it wasn't that high. Maybe it's third or fourth. I don't even. It doesn't. Maybe it doesn't matter. But
I think 2013 fourth is what they agree
okay,
on.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there were some really good bands. That's what I want to get at. Is that there were some really good bands, and they were younger, and they took on the genre emo, and they didn't seem to be affected by it, or really they embraced it, and it made it feel a lot cooler. And that's some of those bands that we all know now, like the world is a beautiful place, and Infoxing, just like. Uh, and then there's just a whole slew of this like new generation, next generations, that are kind of like championing that word in a much more positive way. I'm very thankful to them for doing that because whether we like it or not, it's a genre label that's stuck. So the fact that they kind of came around and were like, and kind of put more of a positive spin on it is, I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. That's
And
I
it's
have a
good music too. It was just like they're good bands, they're cool.
yeah, and I mean that era is one of my favorites, and I feel like a lot of those bands were probably bands that pulled, if not like necessarily musical influence, at least like sort of spiritual influence from Cursive, because I feel like a lot of those bands were very a lot of them were in their own lanes, and they were like, and I think you can see a through line from like albums like Ugly Organ to what Foxing was doing or to what The World Is was doing. So I'm sure there's a little passing of the torch or mutual love or whatever you call it going
Well,
on.
that's cool as hell. I mean, I love anytime people sense that or suggest that. I think it's just the best, because that goes back to devouring. It just goes back to that very simple excitement of the things out in the world excite me very much, and then I in turn want to excite others. You know.
So speaking of, Cursive have just signed to a record label that's probably best known for helping propel that sort of fourth wave of emo, Run for Cover. Tell me about you've been doing your own label for a few records before this. So tell me about why the decision to join a label again and how come it was Run for Cover.
Yeah. We we did Saddle Creek Forever, and then we decided Saddle Creek. What we're it was a collective, and we Saddle Creek was basically like our label, but as it really blew up and expanded in a lot of ways, and it became its own entity, and we were really no longer. We were on Saddle Creek, but we it wasn't really our label anymore. I didn't feel like it. Uh, so we decided that we would prefer to go back to being the independent band that we are and own our own catalog. So that's why we started 15 Passenger, which is a label that Cursive runs now. And we did our last two albums on 15 Passenger. And when it came up time, and I also did a couple solo albums on 15 Passenger as well. When it came around time to do this Devourer record, at the top of the process, we just kind of, just remaining open minded. We assessed that we are proud of 15 Passenger, and we're happy with what we did. With the last two records, we feel like it was a success, as far as like what we set out to do. But we daydreamed, well, yeah, sure, but what if, say, we never ever reach out to labels? We hadn't done, almost never. And so we're like, well, what if there was interest out there? And it resulted in an actual staff, of, an actual community of people that were like helping us work on a record, or market a record or get a record out to people. And so we said, shit, yeah, why not? Because 15 Passenger is really small. It really is essentially just us. So that was a lot of the impetus. It was just kind kind of a, what if this album deserves more? That kind of positive attitude. What if we could? What if we had a little bit more of a footprint, as far as like getting the word out about the record? So we thought we'd give it a shot. And we reached out to a handful of different labels, and surprisingly to us, there was interest out there, and we ended up choosing Run for Cover because they're just a lot of good people with a lot of good music. It just it just felt like and we're currently feeling very much like in a honeymoon stage with working with them. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I've only heard really, really good things, so it was exciting to me when I saw the signing announced. So
Yeah, well, us too. That's kind of why we ended up on there too. It's just kind of asking around. Everyone's like, Run for Cover. Oh my god, they're the best. So we're like, right on.
so getting to the other side of that word devourer. So obviously there's like, I feel like a pretty strong theme coming through on this record. You can just kind of feel thoughts about the apocalypse or the state of the world and feeling pretty negative and maybe even hopeless about the state of the world. And also like looking at things like privilege and like not just injustice, but also like injustices that happen. And then the way that we maybe have to either fight for them or go on with our lives. There's like a lot of topical stuff in there that I feel is probably relatable to a lot of people listening to the record. Like, so tell me a little bit about the kind of headspace you were in writing these songs, the kind of thoughts you were having, things you were hoping to get out into the world and to say with this record?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it for me is reactionary to just kind of, whatever. It's the normal things of just life experiences. But I kind of reactionary to watching social media and how it works and kind of seeing, I think, I don't know, I don't want to be too detrimental, but I, I think social media accidentally exposes a lot of the uglier aspects of humanity. Uh, and So I kind of wanted to touch on that. I just felt compelled to touch on that. Not like I want to just take a big dump on everybody, but I think it's a good. I think it's a good lesson. I think it's good just to talk about, recognize maybe some of our shortcomings. Uh, yeah, I mean that's in there. Also, and I mean, really, there's a lot of really very as we all know, as you know, there's a lot of just problematic current things going on, and it has been for for years now. But yeah, I mean, Devourer now, as I think of it primarily as to really, as far as the umbrella term of Devourer, it's humanity, but it's kind of like I kind of like try to maybe more specifically. So to give all those countries that aren't really doing us any harm, but are just being harmed, I kind of like to say like humanity, but kind of more like first world for me, humanity, more specifically, are devouring everything. Uh, and yeah, and there's some, and then there's some like some you know climate and or like Earth's resources that are kind of involved in that kind of concept as well. I think that humanity, yeah, it's like humanity is devouring this planet and we're devouring one another. Um, but as with the way I often like to write, I like to kind of get into the micro circumstance, like situations of like of our day-to-day routine and how that maybe is reflected on that as well. And that's where I think a lot of the like snarkier, and I think I kind of apologize, but it's also not that big a deal. I'm not making fun of anyone specific. I'm just making fun of people kind of in general. uh, which I guess I just say that I'm a little bit sensitive to the level of snark that I have. But people who are close to me know that I'm a very snarky motherfucker. So I guess just me being honest in in the music.
I mean, the snark definitely comes through on something like on that song, like the avalanche of our demise, and it's like, never mind the ticking clock. Besides, you're totally swamped today. Like it feels, like it's. I don't think I get why you might preemptively apologize, but it's funny in a dark humor way, I think.
Yeah, in a way that I also hope that and if it's a matter of if some people recognize themselves in it, then like that's okay. Like I'm not telling you you're an asshole. I'm just saying you maybe act like an asshole sometimes. And that's me too. Like it's I'm not on a pedestal when I'm saying this shit. I try to include myself.
And I feel like we as people are, complex characters. And it's like there's maybe some days you can relate to that and other days where you look down on somebody else showing those tendencies.
Sure. No, totally. Yeah. It's obviously way better to see those tendencies and let them reflect on how you do it in your own life. But that's not always the case.
So I kind of sense a lot of hopelessness on the record. So I'm curious, do you have hope that a better world is possible in your lifetime or my lifetime? Or does it just feel like increasingly futile?
Yeah, wow, tough question. I mean, yeah, because yeah, I don't really have a lot of no, I don't have a lot of hope. Um, I wish I wish I could say something different. I wish I could feel differently, but uh, if anything, I just like the rise of well, how about this? It's like the rise of like nationalism and authoritarianism that we see around the planet. I feel like like say pre-Trump, it felt a lot more like even though we could recognize like, oh man, as like a leading first world country, we're very problematic. We're like real like we're still quietly imperializing so many nations, and it's really gross. It's really dark. Um, but but yet nationalism and authoritarianism still seem like things that were problems that other countries had. Uh, and now it's here. It's our country too. And I think that is emblematic, of just like a greater problem. And you see it in the UK, you see it in Germany, you see it in these our peer countries, France, absolutely, like. Uh, uh, so yeah, I don't know. I don't. What's the major shift that's going to happen that's going to get us to that like utopia that we've seen in science fiction movies or in books, where we like kind of like are actually able to live in harmony? Why can we live in such disharmony?
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's like, I don't want to say we were fed lies, but maybe. But it is, I felt as a younger, more naive and hopeful person, I guess, that it was like, oh, like all these bad things are in the past and we're on this path towards like clearly something better. And then now it just seems like a lot of stuff's getting reversed. I don't know.
I think it's good to just keep fighting on a smaller scale. um Try to be human, try like try to be human in the better sense of like a not what we're currently representing. Humanity isn't being represented very well, I guess, for the most part. Uh, but I do think that there's a lot of I do think there's so much good. There's so much good in who we are and what we could be. I just wish that we could kind of get out of the way of like opportunity. I think. I mean, these are kind of cliches I'm going to get into, but it's just like like corporations are a major problem. We built, capital built corporations, and corporations become these entities, and everybody gets to say like, oh, well, it's for the, uh, everyone can start making like really shitty, shady decisions because they're like, well, it's for the good of the company, you know. And so you don't really have to put a face on it. It's like, hey, it's not me. If it was up to me, I'd make sure everyone was taken care of. But we need to, but we specifically have to, look out for our investors. So our hands are tied. Sorry. And there's so much of that kind of decision making, um, in around the world, or at least in these first world societies. I'm not actually very well versed in second and third world countries.
So another quote you had in the bio for the record is you were talking about imperialism and you said it's not just the political, it's personal imperialism and the imperialism of relationships, the way we imperialize one another, even ourselves. What did you mean by that?
I think that's just. I mean, maybe that's macro into micro as well. I think that there is a tendency to to be taking advantage of one another, even when we don't even. Maybe that's a problem with humanity as well, right? Even if we feel like we're trying to be like the best people we can, there's still this kind of streak of maybe greediness, for lack of maybe a better term right now. And maybe that's part of maybe that's just nature, right? Maybe that's just like trying to get food in our bellies, trying to get like a dry place to sleep. uh, I mean, I think that's all I think I'm probably getting kind of obtuse here, but so I think there's a tendency to imperialize one another in that regard too. That it's even if we think we're not trying to get a leg up, we probably are in one way or another. Um, I think that in the lyrics too, I think I try to see that too as the inner turmoil that I have as well of like the demons in me that are trying to devour the better side, the better half of me, as I continue to grapple with being a good person.
So another song that stood out to me thematically, that song, The Age of Impotence, are you singing at all about thoughts of Cursive as a band still being around? Or am I reading a little bit too much into it?
Yeah, no, it is. That seems about right. It's pretty personal. It's it's kind of in this it's a real kind of shitty sour grapes kind of a song, I'd say, as far as as far as like the the complaining that I'm personally doing in a song like that, uh is feeling like feeling like I've continued to do. I continue to put albums out as often as I can, and continue to explore songwriting as much as I can, but feeling like it's starting to like it's been falling on deaf ears for so many years now, and that's kind of what the age of impotence is for me, is kind of saying, as you get older and you're in kind of a long career, there can be that tendency to where people do appreciate what you're doing, but really they already kind of, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation, but really they're kind of already set with like, I've got my records about you, and I like them, and I like you, and I'll come out and see you play. Um, but there's not like, we want nothing more than we want nothing more than just to continue. We just want to keep writing songs and putting them out and trying to write the best things we can. And I get I get down on myself and get kind of hard on myself about feeling like there's a not enough people, like, or I shouldn't say not enough, but like that people aren't really listening anymore. Uh, but it doesn't really stop me from doing what I do. It's just kind of it's just my more dour self being a little bit more self-indulgent as far as my nanny boo boo complaints.
Yeah. Well, I know that both Cursive and The Good Life have done like, anniversary tours for albums. Like, what's your sort of personal feeling on doing tours like that?
Yeah, I reviled them for for many years, and kind of was begrudgingly talked into doing it. For the Ugly Organ was the first one that we did, and I came away from it recognizing that it's actually just a really positive experience, and it doesn't and to for people to see it as money grabs, it seems really short sighted. Uh, it was such a positive celebration uh, of the music, but also just kind of everyone's lives. I mean, everyone's there with like so steeped in nostalgia, when you're playing those shows, and it felt like such a gift that everyone was giving to one another or something, like it was definitely a gift for us to have these people really want to kind of congregate and be like, we like, nice one, nice one on that record. But more so, I want to look at it as the other way of like the gift of like, yeah, like of us deciding to do it. It's just like, yeah, let's get together, let's congregate and celebrate what happened to, let's just celebrate like our lives, not just the music necessarily, but just like celebrate existence from 10 years ago. And if this happens to be the soundtrack to that, then that's a good way to do it. uh, so yeah, I have such a different attitude about it now. I just see it as, I no longer look scornfully at other bands when they do it. uh, I think that it's a yeah, I think it's just I get a victory lap. It's a celebration of something that happened in our pasts, and revisiting it just the way like we revisit, out here in LA. It's just like the curation of movies all the time. It's just revisiting, you know, all these movies that we love. It's like they keep putting them back on the screen. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like like I get the cynicism surrounding it. I feel like I had a point in my life where I felt like if a band did it, they were admitting that they weren't moving forward anymore or something. And
Yeah,
I
I
no longer
totally
feel
get
that. And like, I
that.
mean,
Mhm.
I went to the Ugly Organ tour at St. Vitus in Brooklyn. It was awesome. And then
Cool.
since then, you've made a bunch of other great records. Like, and it just seems like more and more acceptable to see people be like, yeah, let's celebrate an anniversary and then make a new record and go tour that. And both experiences have like their own appeal and their own merit. I feel at this point.
Yeah, they both work for me, and they both excite me. Another thing, yeah, that I didn't really take into consideration upon first contemplating whether we would ever do tours like that. Uh, but and this is so much more simple. Is just ask yourself, Tim. Like, ask yourself, like in 2003, or for Domestica, which is like 2001, I think, or something. It's like in 2001, if if you would have an opportunity to get to play this entire album front to back, I mean, I would jump on it. I would have jumped on it. That's always that's it's such an exciting thing to get to do. It's like, wow, you mean people would be interested in hearing me play this from front to back? That's a huge compliment, and I'm surprised that and when I start thinking about it on those terms, from that perspective, I'm surprised that I ever even balked at it at all. Because in a personal, just on a very personal level, um, being afforded the opportunity to play an album front to back is like a really cool opportunity.
So another thing new about the new record is you co-produced it with Mark Jacob Hudson. What was working with him like compared to other producers you worked with over the years, like Mike Mogus or Matt Bayless?
Similar and different. Just different. He's different personalities. Sure, there's a lot of different sonic approaches, but he's a great guy, and we got to know each other over the last few years, touring with one another. He was doing front of house for us, and he's got along really well. And I just really respect where he's coming from musically. Kind of surprised at what a good fit it felt like we would be, and it really was too. As far as working together, it felt really seamless. And I don't think there was ever misunderstandings or disagreements about the approach, at all. I think, excuse me, here and there, he would kind of take some like wilder stabs at some ideas he would have about this or that given part of a song, and I think if I recall, it was just always like, oh wow, yeah, that's really cool. Like it was a good, no, it was a good experience. He's great at what he does.
Awesome. Well, before we go, is there anything else that you want to touch on about the record that we haven't, or shout out or plug?
I mean, yeah, I don't know, if you feel good, I feel great. Thanks for the nice conversation. I'll apologize now at the end of this that I have some kind of a summer cold, and so I think I'm I think I started as like a little less than affable, but I really appreciate a nice conversation about music. So
Thanks. Well, thank you. And I didn't notice that at all. So
okay, good.
you sound great. And yeah, thanks it was a blast to talk. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, no sweat. Thank you for having us.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Thanks again to Tim. Pick up Cursive's new record, Devourer, out September 13th on Run for Cover. And catch Cursive on tour this fall. Their tour starts October 18th in Omaha. They'll be on the road with Gladdy, which is the current band led by Augusta from Cayetana. And speaking of the fest, they're playing that again this year. They're also playing Riot Fest, so go catch Cursive if you can. They put on a really great show. And if you like what you heard, give us a good rating, like, subscribe, tell your friends about us. All that little stuff goes a really long way, and we always appreciate it. Thanks so much, and see you next time.